Grandpa moved to Montreal to establish the record business in Canada. Why did he choose Montreal? Pardon me, Montreal. I must learn to pronounce it the Canadian way. I'm even trying to get my Canadian accent back. But the Canadian government won't let me. I've applied for citizenship because now Canadian government allows former Canadians to get their Canadian citizenship back and have dual citizenship. I applied, I paid my $85 Canadian, and have been waiting a year, and just learned before I came up here that my application, although I met all the requirements, has been complicated by the fact that my father was an American, became a Canadian, went back and became an American again, and got his American citizenship, from which my American citizenship was derived. And unfortunately, I was a minor at the time, and so the Canadian government is giving me a hard time. Maybe they don't want me. Anyway, I'm hoping to solve that problem because I'd like to have my Canadian citizenship back, and we'll see how that goes. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, let's get to the Canadian company, which is probably what you're more interested in. Why was it founded in Montreal? Very simple. There were 2 or 3 reasons. First of all, at that time, in 1900, Montreal was the center of Canadian commerce and the center of Canadian culture. And those were 2 good reasons. But the main reason was it was the closest Canadian big city to Philadelphia, where Grandpa had his operation functioning. And by the way, why did he go to Philadelphia? He lived in Washington. What was the reason for going to Philadelphia? In Philadelphia, there was a man by the name of Max Levy. Max Levy was the inventor of photo engraving. All of the pictures that got published in magazines and newspapers used the Max Levy's photo engraving principle. Grandpa, under his etching the human voice philosophy, felt that that was the ideal way to manufacture records. The same way they made the cuts, if you will recall, that were clamped onto a press and were used to stamp out photographs. And that was the manufacturing principle that Grandpa introduced. And so he wanted to be near Mr. Levy in order to get his expertise. And as you know, let's make this very clear, Grandpa never said he invented the disc record. He never said he invented the lateral cut. What he was trying to do with the invention of November 8, 1887 was to create a method of mass producing cylinders from a single master. That was his goal. He didn't even mention the disc record in his American patent. It is not mentioned. He did, however, refer to disc records in his German and British patents. Why didn't he mention them in the American patent? He thought he was legally prohibited from doing so. So it wasn't included. If you look at the American patent, there's no mention of the disc. In the European patents, however, he showed, and I would show you a little curiosity about that in a moment, he showed that discs should be recorded inside start, inside to out. He also showed that the recording should be on the bottom of the disc, which was done so that if you recorded on the bottom of the disc and were chipping away material in order to make your recording, the chip, as they called it, that was being scraped away would fall away and would not clog up the recording. That was the whole purpose of recording on the bottom, is so that the chip would fall out of the way. It was also the reason for recording inside start, because the chip would tend to go towards the center of the disc. So with inside start, the needle is going towards the outside while the chip is going to the inside and not clogging up the needle. So that's how that came about. Now, Emile had 3 sons and 3 daughters, and the 3 sons were pretty bright guys. Emile never went to college, of course, although in Germany he was hailed as Mr. Engineer, but he was not one. His 3 sons all graduated as mechanical engineers from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, which is the leading engineering school in North America. And so they were pretty bright guys. He sent Herbert up to Montreal to learn the record business. And the interesting thing was, although Herbert ended up running the business, legally he was not permitted to be president. The Canadian government had decreed that a Canadian must be the head of a company that's owned by a foreigner. So my grandfather engaged a man by the name of Emile to be the figurehead and to administer the business, whereas number 1 son, Herbert, was there to handle technical matters and manufacturing, that sort. So, but Herbert, of course, ended up running the company, and the Mr. Blout remained on, but he was strictly the figurehead. Herbert was running it. He did many great things. He put the company on the map. He also destroyed it. We'll get to that in a moment. At any rate, well, what comes up must come down, right? At any rate, Herbert, by the way, was believed to be the first Canadian disc jockey. And he took a gramophone at home. He took records at home. He would call up one of the Montreal stations, which later turned, it was an experimental radio station. This was in 1920 or 21. It later became the powerhouse station known as CFCF. And Herbert was doing remote broadcasts by telephone line, which of course became the standard in all over the world for broadcasting away from your station. Everything went over a telephone line. And he would play a record, and when the record was over, there would be silence. And sometimes he talked to what little audience he had, and sometimes he just took his time and found another record that he liked and put it on. And of course, they had a microphone. He had a microphone in front of the horn. It was the telephone, of course. And he just played records into the phone, and when he was finished, he just said goodbye, and he returned another day. So that was kind of cute. But one of his innovations was that actually Emile was not happy with, was Herbert's emphasis, and I think Uncle Herbert was right, on recording Canadian artists with this Canadian company. Incidentally, Emile owned the company entirely, but the Berliner Gramophone Company of the United States, Emile did not own. He had 10% interest in it, 90% was owned by the backers, but the important thing was, what Emile really wanted was royalties on his patents, and he got that. That was his main source of income, was not ownership in the company. And of course you know that Emile had years of trouble trying to get the gramophone launched in the United States, and finally he went to Germany and persuaded the great doll maker Cameron Reinhardt to manufacture little miniature gramophones with 5-inch discs, and that's how the commercial record industry got launched. And many people thought, because of that, that Emile had envisioned his gramophone as purely a toy. They misled themselves because of the Cameron Reinhardt manufacturing situation. And by the way, the Kemmer discs were, as far as I know, all manufactured in New Jersey. Emile's voice, as you know, is on many of them, speaking in his English with a slight accent. His English was fluent, by the way, and but he never lost his accent. And he produced them for the European market in German and in English. And sometimes it was nursery rhymes like "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." You remember that one? And there were other little ditties, many of which he sang himself. He was his own recording artist because he worked cheap. Anyway, I'm skipping, but let's get to some serious business. Herbert defied his father. Emile wanted a minimum of Canadian product and maximum of imported masters from the Victor Company in the United States. Reason, Victor had well-known artists, but the main reason, of course, was the masters didn't cost him anything. He hadn't produced them. He just got copies and banged out lots of copies. So there was no, it was very expedient to produce records where you didn't have to record the artists originally. Recording Canadian artists meant that the recording studio expense would be involved. And by the way, recording studios in those days were known as laboratories. Now they're recording studios. Anyway, Herbert was defying his father, and the company was prospering. They were up to 2 million discs a year in the early 1900s. That's pretty darn good, particularly for a small market like Canada, where the population of California today exceeds the population of Canada. By the way, a lot of Canadians go to California to die. The town of Long Beach is loaded. That's not why I left. I was dragged kicking and screaming to Maryland by my wife. She threatened me. She says, "I'm moving to Maryland. You come or not as you see fit." And because she's 17 years younger than I am, I knew I needed somebody to nursemaid me in my old age, so I went. That is it.